Welcome back to another Python tutorial. All right, so today we are kicking off a new series where we are going to start working with the Microsoft Graph API. So for those of you who are not aware, the Microsoft Graph API is provided by, you guessed it, Microsoft. And it's an API that the way I like to think about it is it's kind of like this one size fits all, or this kind of one-stop place where you can grab a bunch of different information about your Office 365 account and being able to leverage it in other projects or applications. So the idea behind it is you would go to the Graph API if you want to get user information, if you wanted to get file information. In some cases, you want to get email information or even Teams call, so Microsoft Teams call information, and being able to go to this one place to grab all of that kind of Office 365, if you want to put it, information from a single location. So it's very advantageous. Additionally, we can use the Graph API in a limited fashion to interact with Office applications like Excel. So while you wouldn't necessarily work specifically with the Excel application, you could work with an Excel workbook, for example, and you could grab range values, or you could grab a table object, for example. The same goes for other applications like Outlook and Microsoft OneNote. You could use the Graph API to grab that information. So what we're going to do in the first video is we're going to get an application set up on Microsoft Azure, and we're going to make sure that this application can access the Microsoft Graph API. And then once we've done that, we are going to show you how to clone the Microsoft Graph API client library I built. So that way you can start working with the Graph API. Now, I will warn you that the library is still in development, so I haven't nearly hit all the endpoints, but there are a few different services you can kind of start using in a limited fashion. So things like Drive services, the notebook services, and the next one I think I'm working on is, I believe, mail. If I remember correctly, I think I was going to start the mail one next, or file items. So that's what the plan is for this particular video, is get the app set up, make sure you can clone the repo, and then from there, we're gonna just get you a token and then save that token. So with that being said, let's get started. Now I am gonna just take you really briefly to the Microsoft Graph homepage. So if you go to developer.microsoft.com/graph, this will take you to the main page where you can learn more about the Microsoft Graph product. And additionally, they do offer things like getting started guides, documentation, and then the API reference if you want to see specific endpoints. Also some resources like blogs, training, sample SDKs, and all sorts of different stuff. Additionally, they have a tool for those of you who want to kind of just start using it right away to see kind of what it looks like and what are the things you can do with it. They have the Graph Explorer. So if you click this little link here, you're going to be redirected to this little page. And then this is a way where you could interact with the Graph API to see just some common examples that you could do. So you can see here, there's endpoints that are related to Excel, groups, Microsoft Teams, Microsoft To Do, notifications, OneDrive, OneNote, Outlook Calendar, People, Planner, SharePoint sites, SharePoint lists, search, lots of different things that you can start doing with it. So for example, if I wanted to grab my my root drive and then the children that belong to that root drive, I could just do this URL and then, lo and behold, you get a list of information. So lots of good information here. And also it kind of helps if you need to just kind of start exploring a little bit and figuring out what endpoints you might need to hit in order to get the information you need. This would be a good place to start. Additionally, they do provide some quick start guides that fit different languages. I will warn you that these are not necessarily like actual packages like you can install. These are more like projects where you could get up and started with a particular language, and they walk you through some of the common stuff in order to get ready with that. And then additionally, they have some tutorials on the documentation page as well. Now, I also have provided my own documentation on GitHub. It's more for setting up the application because that's really where most of the time is going to be spent. What I would say is getting ready. So if you go to my GitHub, areed1192, and then you go to my repositories tab, because this one's not pinned on the front, you're going to see one for the Microsoft Graph Python client. And if you go into the samples folder, you'll see setting up an app.md. This is a README file, and this will walk you through the steps in order to get ready. So feel free to use that as well. So in order to set up an application, like I said before, we're going to have to go on Microsoft Azure. So if you go to your Azure portal, so there's different ways you can do it. You can just go to Azure portal like this. And if you go to Microsoft Azure portal, you can go to portal. If you're not signed in, you would have to sign in, obviously. And then once you're here, we're going to go to your Active Directory. And then once we're at that Active Directory, we're going to set up a new application. Why is it not loading? God forbid. It's like sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting. What's going on? Why is it taking so long to load? Well, while that's loading, I don't know why it's not loading. It could be that the portal is down, which would be very upsetting if it was when I'm trying to record a video. Additionally, if you do want to explore my library a little bit, I do have the actual underlying code as well. I think it's going perfect. Okay. We got somewhere. That's the fun part. Okay, so once you're on your dashboard page or your home page, wherever you end up being, you want to go over here to the left side pane, and you'll notice one called Azure Active Directory. And then from here, you would want to go down to App Registrations. And then you're going to want to do New Registration. Now, once you do New Registration, you do need to give your application a name. So say, for example, Microsoft Graph API Tests. It can be whatever you want, but naturally you try to give your application a name that's meaningful. And then from here, there's a couple of things that you need to consider. So when you register an application, you want to be able to decide who can access this application. So by default, it says accounts in this organizational directory only. In other words, it's saying basically the Azure directory itself. So that's the only one who can access it, or that's the only accounts you could access. So you could access accounts that are associated with this directory. This does not represent a personal account. I'm going to say that again. This does not represent a personal account. Additionally, you can do any organizational directory. So if you have multiple Azure directories, so I have a personal one and then I have a work one. If I wanted to be able to access multiple directories, then I would do this one right here, the second option. Additionally, if you wanted to be able to access multiple directories and personal Microsoft accounts, then you would want to do this one. We are going to be doing personal Microsoft accounts because I want to be able to get information related to my personal account. So my personal OneDrive, not my work OneDrive, my personal OneDrive. Now, this will do it for both. So I'm okay with doing this one. If you want it to be a little bit more strict, you could just say, I want to do only personal Microsoft accounts. So that's an option as well. Additionally, you need to specify a redirect URI. You don't technically have to add this, but you should. So this will help when it comes to the login process. So in this situation, I just need to provide a URL. And in this situation, I don't have to do anything fancy. I can just do localhost, and then I can give it a path, basically. So I'll just call it graph login. That works for me. I'm going to copy this really quickly. And then when we get to the point where we need to clone our repository, I will show you where we're going to be putting it, but I'm just going to put it there for right now. I'm going to go back here, and then you would just do register. And it does take a second or two. Who knows? It might take a little bit longer given how slow it's been, but it looked like it went pretty quickly. So once you're here, there's a couple other pieces of information that you need. The first thing is your client ID. So this little guy right here. So we'll copy that as well. Again, I'm going to put it in my little folder so that way it's there. And then additionally, we need to get a client secret. So this is not on this page. You actually have to navigate a little bit. So on this little pane right here, you'll notice certificates and secrets. So you're just going to click that. And then from here, you're going to do new client secret. Okay, and then you have an option. When do you want it to expire? 1 year, 2 year, or never? I'll just put never to be simple. And then from here, I need to add a client secret. So this is just a description. My client secret for my Graph API project. Again, nothing super crazy, but just a little bit. And then it's going to create a secret. Please make sure to copy it from this page. If you leave this page, you can't get it again. It's gone. You'd have to create a new client secret. So copy it. Once you copy it, I'm just going to again put it in my little file right here. And that is pretty much it. Simple, I know, but it's not too bad. And then I think with this one, we can see, well, I guess it doesn't technically go away right away, but basically if you were to close out the portal and then try to go back into it, you wouldn't be able to see it. And they put that on the documentation as well. But you can see right here, it's still matching the same. So just copy it. In other words, just be safe and copy it, even if it might stick there for like 2 seconds. Okay, and then once you do that, that's it for right now. Next, we're gonna go into the Microsoft Graph Python library and we're gonna clone it. So I'm gonna copy this really quickly. So we'll go over to our main one and then I'll do code. And then right here, you wanna do HTTPS. They have a new CLI option as well, but we want this one. I'm gonna go back into my Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna do a new window really quickly, just so you guys can see this process. Okay, I got my source control pane. I'm gonna go there, then go to clone repository, Control V to paste it in here, and then press enter. Okay, anytime you clone it, you need to specify a location. I want it on my desktop just to be simple. And then you can say, open this repository. And basically it's going to look exactly the same as like we said before. So the main thing that you want to do is when you're in this particular location, I did provide some sample files for you. So you would just want to fill out this information in the write config video.py file, like I did in the previous window. So you'd want to just fill it out like you see it here. Obviously, this information would be different. It would match with what's on your app. And then from here, you can just do run Python file in terminal. And you can see right here, it does create a new file for you. I'm actually going to make it where it overwrites that other one for me. Okay. Perfect. I'm gonna delete that other one. I don't need it. And that's pretty much it for the config file. So now from this point, if you wanted to actually install the library, so if you wanted to actually install it because it's not technically hosted on PyPy yet, it's still in development. If you want to do a local install, it would simply be pip install -e period. So for your root directory. And then you do enter. Now, this should go pretty quick for me because I already have it. At least all the other stuff. Ooh, we get to do another update soon. Fun. There's only 2 requirements right now. So there is a request library, and then there is the Microsoft Authentication library. This is actually really helpful when it comes to getting an access token and a refresh token. So this is leveraged in the main client file. You'll see me use it multiple times when it comes to getting tokens and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So I think it's some of these you'll see me use the actual thing. So grab refresh token and stuff like that. And then from here, just to kind of validate and go through this process of actually using certain services, I'm going to leverage this one right here. And I'm just going to change a couple things. So I'm actually going to do a couple things that we need here. I'll create a new file. And I'll say test client.py. I'll import pretty print. I will import config parser. Actually, I'll import the actual object. So from config parser, import config parser. And then actually from here too, I'll do the same thing. So from pretty print, import pretty print, just like that. And then obviously we need our Microsoft Graph client as well. So we say from our Microsoft.client, import the graph, Microsoft Graph client. So that's what that one would do. And just to kind of make things go a little bit quicker, I just want to grab some of this and then we'll walk through what's kind of going on here. Alrighty. Disregard this for a second. So all this is going to do is it's going to initialize your config parser. So that's going to basically help read your file. Now, right now it's leading into my old one. I don't want it to do that. I want it to lead into this one that is on my samples folder. So I'm going to go to samples and then configs, S at the end. And then I want to make sure I'm still reading that config.ini file. Keep in mind that I organized it into sections. So there's a graph API section and there's simply 3 values. I read each of those values and I store them in a variable. And then from here, I simply initiate a new instance of my Microsoft Graph client. There's a couple arguments I need to pass through. So I'm going to first change this really quickly before I forget. You need to pass through your client ID. You need to pass through your client secret, your redirect URI, and then your scopes. Again, I'll talk about that in a second. And then your credentials. So the credentials is simply a file path to a JSON file where you can store things like your refresh token and your access token. The reason we're doing this is so that way, if you close down your script and then say you walk away from your computer for 2 days and then you come back and you want to reuse your code again, you don't have to go through the full authentication process again, because by that point, your access token will have expired. Your access token expires, I think, in like 1 hour. And so when it expires, you're going to have to get a new one using your refresh token. So if that refresh token is not provided, then I can't get you a new access token. And then I'm going to have to ask you to go through that full authentication process again. However, if you provide this, what it will do is it saves that access token and your refresh token in a location. Ideally, you want to put it somewhere secure. And then what it will do is every time you initialize the script, it will take that refresh token. And as your access token expires, it will go and get you a new one behind the scenes. So that's nice. You don't have to worry about it then. And then you can just use your script every so often. Don't quote me. I'm not sure exactly how long the refresh token expires, but I ran it this morning and it's been a few days since I've used the Graph API. So it seems like it lasts a pretty decent long time. Okay. And then something that is important when it comes to Microsoft Graph is you do have to specify your scopes. And basically the scope, it just defines what access you have to what services, right? So for example, I have files. Well, I might want to read write to all those files. So I might want to be able to read those files and write those files. So you need to specify your scopes depending on what you're trying to do. Now, you might be wondering, well, what scopes do I need when? Well, I'm going to kind of throw it back to you and I'm going to say, well, what service do you want to use? If you go up to me and say, hey, Alex, I want to use files. Great. Let me give you some options and you tell me what works best for you. So I think, if I remember correctly, if you go down to the different services down here, so like say I go to overview for like calendars, man, it's slow today. Let me also go here too, because there's another place you can get it as well, which is if you go to API permissions on your Azure portal, you can also see certain ones that are delegated at this point. So for example, if I want to see the different permissions, I could go add permission and then I can go to Microsoft Graph and I can look at application permissions and you can see all the permissions that you can offer. So for example, let's say I want to look at mail. You can do mail read basic, mail read basic all, and they give you a nice little description about what that access entails and whether it requires admin consent. So if I want to be able to read your emails, I have to have admin consent, at least from the application perspective. So this kind of gets a little bit complicated. It's really kind of centered around how you want this application. In your situation, because you're going to be interacting with the Graph API directly and you're going to be able to click a button that says, I give you permission, you don't technically have to do it from right here. So I think it gave up here. Find meeting times. Here we go. So I know they listed it somewhere. I can't remember exactly. I'll have to just put a link because I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But there's different places you can find what scopes you need when. I think they even tell you on the Graph Explorer. So here is where you can see your permissions as well. So you can modify these permissions. You can do all sorts of different things. So this is another place as well where if you need to see that information and you need to see what permissions you need when, this would also be a really good resource to kind of do that. So if you use it, they will prompt you and say, hey, do you want to be able to do this? So don't feel like there's not a lot of resources around this topic. There really is. So what we're going to do next is, now that we've kind of written everything out, we're going to log in first. So I'm going to run this and then we're going to show you what the output looks like. Oh my goodness. So just like the TD Ameritrade API library, you will need to go to a new URL. And you can see right here. And so first they're telling you, hey, this is an unverified app, which is a good thing. It's basically saying, I don't know who it is, but they're asking for these permissions. So it's something good to be aware of. And it's just telling you the permissions that you want to consent to. And I'm saying, okay, I'm fine with this. You can read all my information, take all my data, right? And then it's going to go to it. You're going to want to copy this little guy up here. This is your redirect URL. So this contains the code that I need in order to go and get your information. And then once you've done that, you'll notice over here a new file was created. And this contains all your information. So you're going, oh my God, so much different stuff. Your access token, your refresh token, ID token, blah, 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 blah. So lots of different information. So now that we've done that, let's kind of just take it one little tiny step further and let's see. Let's get my root drive and we'll just, again, show you kind of what that looks like. So the nice thing that I try to do with the Graph client is if you want to go to a particular service, as I call it, you would just specify that service. So here I'm saying, okay, I want to get the drive services. I'm probably not going to make them methods. I might make them properties to kind of represent like an object per se. So this might change a little bit, but I'll probably have updated it by the time I record the second video. So all this is going to do is it's going to go to my drive services, and then it's going to get my root drive. So basically my personal OneDrive. So if I run this, I should see a bunch of crazy information. You're like, oh my goodness, look at all this stuff. So it's basically just my drive. Nothing super fancy, but enough to make it interesting, right? So you can see there's a tag created by, oh my God, created time, folder count. So I have 36 folders, so on and so on. If I wanted to, I could even navigate to it. So lots of good stuff. So lots of good information. And then you could technically use this information. So they have things like a drive ID, which you could then go and get drive items like actual files and so on and so on. So with that being said, though, that does conclude our first video of getting you up and running with the Microsoft Graph API. So if you do have any questions about just getting it set up, if you're confused about permissions or anything like that, feel free to put those down below as well. And I'll do my best to hopefully guide you through it. And then next video, we're going to go through, I think, probably the drive services first. We'll go in detail looking at the different endpoints. And then probably after that, we will go to users and then OneNote. So we'll start with an application looking at OneNote. So again, any final questions, put them down below. Otherwise, we will see you in the next video.